Chapter 2, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, by Ms. Chunks. Bakugo loses his pants. Get out of the way! Ochako only just avoids tripping over her own feet as she hastily backpedals away from Bakugo, who's newly alleviated of his gravitational pull and poised to do something that feels dangerous. Drifting a short distance from the ground, Bakugo splays his hands wide and then a second later goes off like a bottle rocket. Bakugo's always been fast, but one moment he's there and the next an ascending comet, currently hurtling for a wrought iron bridge between building husks in the cityscape training area as it happens. Bakugo slams into the crudely fashioned structure and rebounds, not like a tennis ball off the top of a net, but the way a grenade hits another grenade. He's going fast enough that simply stopping doesn't seem to be an option, and though Bakugo does change direction as he blasts off the structure, it's with an explosion that blows the metal walkway to pieces. Now Bakugo's going even faster, and for a moment Ochako wonders if this is how he dies, before writing off such an unlikely notion. Release! Ochako picks a moment when Bakugo is relatively close to the ground to return his weight, and not expecting it, he almost falls, but being Bakugo managed to blast himself into a somersault, landing heavily but most surely on his feet. I wasn't finished! He roars across the barren stretch of concrete between himself and Ochako, stomping back with an utterly peeved look. Don't make me give you a safe word and fucking ignore it! You were going so fast, I thought you'd lose control. Ochako unloads in an equally ungainly and concerned rush, trying not to think about whether that's exactly the right use of the term Bakugo chose. Not that he cares. Don't question my control! Bakugo snarls like a dog, presiding over a very juicy bone, and sticks out his hand once more. Do it again! Once more, Ochako's fingers hesitate just before making contact. So with an impatient huff, Bakugo moves his hand to press against hers. His palm is even hotter than Ochako's speculation, and when he pushes insistently against her fingertips, she activates her quirk almost on reflex. Bakugo begins to float, hand leaving a chemically film on Ochako's skin after he pulls it back. With a push, he lifts off the ground and goes up like a scowling hot air balloon, hands sticking out like fins while Ochako dashes out of range in anticipation of what comes next. This time, it seems like the explosions Bakugo uses to propel himself are a little smaller. He barked at her, but it still looks like to Uraraka like a struggle for control. Bakugo soars high enough for Ochako to be inescapably worried, standing on the ground, putting a crick in her neck, watching him shoot from spot to spot like a self-propelling slingshot pellet. Bakugo has something that most people don't, which is a means to propel himself in the air even when he's weightless. Not even Ochako has that, and being in the air is nauseating enough without moving through it. Just watching Bakugo turns her stomach enough to regret not wearing her costume, inbuilt with its tricks to keep her from hurling chunks at inopportune moments. Even for a skilled airborne combatant like Bakugo, it's clearly not easy for him to keep control without his weight. Spinning on end and blowing things up as a means of landing them, Ochako does a few dainty dances between bits of falling debris, trying to give chase on the ground while Bakugo shoots around like a one-man game of live grenade tennis. But there's also the fact that Ochako isn't really doing anything other than standing around with her quirk engaged. As much as she wants to be here, out of curiosity, if nothing else, there are probably more productive uses for her time. So, Ochako reverts to a familiar habit of making the best of a situation and starts doing some physical exercises, seeing as she's apparently not getting anything else better to do. A few sets later, she's getting into some of Battlegun's favorite combat drills, when she hears a distant cry. Ochako looks up and spots Bakugo hanging off the outside of a building a fair way away. Bakugo is at least 5 floors up on said building, so when Ochako hears him clearly yell, "Drop it!" across the open space, She has to question his judgment for a second. Then she remembers this is Bakugo. So with unplaceable faith, touches her fingers together. Release! Bakugo blasts off just before Ochako lets him go. Weight changing his trajectory as it returns. Ochako watches the graceful arc for a moment before she realizes, another precious moment later, that Bakugo is coming straight for her. Latent programming takes over, and Ochako reacts to Bakugo coming towards the ground too fast, just as she would anyone, leaping like a goalie as he's about to shoot past her. Bakugo kicks like a horse and twists in the air, but Ochako manages to grab hold of him by the fabric of his sweatpants and activates her quirk. What Ochako doesn't account for is Bakugo using his quirk and to try to maneuver out of her way, and ends up being dragged off her feet like a child hanging onto a kite on a particularly blustery day. Ochako feels the fabric she's holding start to move, except it doesn't go in the direction Bakugo does, and as she regains her footing, Ochako comes to a couple of shocking realizations. 1, she's holding Bakugo's pants. 2, he isn't in them. When she can finally move her terrified eyes further afield, Ochako sees Bakugo hanging from a beam of a mock electricity pylon nearby. His loose, evidently way too loose, sweatpants ripple like a strange banner from Ochako's fingertips, which she lets go of to whip her hands together without a second thought. Release! Ochako realizes the moment after she does it that Bakugo hasn't asked her to release him, but that doesn't seem to be their biggest problem right now. Thankfully, the fake pylon Bakugo's hanging from isn't that high off the ground, and he swings off the pole into a flip, landing in a deep squat a few meters from Ochako. Not that she sees much, because Ochako turns around as soon as she clocks that Bakugo is in his underwear. There's literally no good things that could come from facing the other way, and Ochako can already feel a nervous laugh tickling in the back of her throat like bubbles in soda. Sorry! Oshako's voice is in the bird range again, and she even totters a little as she skitters quickly away from where Bakugo's sweatpants landed in front of her. Somehow, not looking only makes the urge to laugh stronger, and Ochako wills herself not to start giggling as Bakugo's footsteps thump up behind her. The rage aura is a warming force on Ochako's back. What did you do that for? Bakugo grunts. I didn't do it on purpose. One advantage of not facing Bakugo, Ochako suddenly realizes, is that he can't see her head turning into a cherry with the intensity of her blush. Using your quirk, idiot. Ochako could be wrong, it's hardly unusual, but that voice in her gut is telling her there's something in Bakugo's tone that makes her think that not only can Bakugo not see her blushing, but the reverse is also true. Ochako resists the temptation to peek around and find out. I was about to land. I know. Sorry, Ochako blurts. You were coming at me so fast and I just reacted. Well, cut it out. Bakugo is annoyed, obviously, but he's not totally livid. It's more of a relief than Ochako expects. It would help if you'd tell me what you're trying to do, Ochako finds herself saying with utter forthrightness. She usually speaks her mind, but there's something about Bakugo that seems to draw it out of her right from the source. I explained already. When? Ochako shoots scathingly. When you said you wanted to fly? It's nice that you asked me to come here and train, but you leave me out of the loop when I'm just standing here being used. It feels harsh when the words come out, but Ochako feels just as strongly that they're true. And Bakugo is never going to realize something like this without being told, so it's put up with the crap or tell him how things are. Bakugo is quiet at first, and Ochako senses a blunt end to this session, a write-off for being too much work. I can use your quirk to go crazy fast, but only in a straight line. And you were right about not being able to get down being a challenge. Bakugo unloads this like a chunk out of some conversation he's been having with himself this entire time. And Ochako blinks. double taking when she registers him saying something about her being right. Can you only cancel part of my weight? Ochako is admittedly a little overwhelmed to have asked for an explanation and ended up with a bulldozer strapped with questions in return. I can try? Bakugo's eyebrows twist above accusatory eyes. Try? I haven't done it a lot, and only with small weights, Ochako explains, but I'm happy to give it a shot. Bakugo makes another one of those sounds, but he doesn't offer further comment. It's not like he has anyone else he can go to for this experiment, so
he has to like it or lump it, if he's not going to leave.
Which Ochako doesn't have a feeling Bakugo will. Confirmed when he barks, "You can turn around already!" Ochako whips around to face a thankfully dressed Bakugo, who has his hands sticking out at her again and maybe a flush of color in his cheeks. He has been blasting himself around the buildings, though, so Ochako tries not to read into it. Try to half it. Ochako's fingers stretch out above Bakugo's, but before she can press her fingertips to his palm, she draws them back. Wait. Ugh, what now? Bakugo sounds just about as annoyed and impatient as Ochako should expect, but it hasn't stopped her before. Well, am I supposed to hang around twiddling my thumbs waiting for you? Ochako's resolve hardens. If you want to train together, you have to do something for me. Piss off if you don't want to be here, Bakugo growls. I'm not making you stay. That's not it, Ochako replies more argumentatively than most people would be around Bakugo. Just fight me a little. Bakugo is clearly unimpressed. What? It's what you do best, isn't it? Ochako doesn't mean to sound like she's defending herself or accusing Bakugo or both at the same time, but she kind of does. I know it's kind of a big deal you want to train with me and all, but we should both get something out of it, and if you're gonna help me, that's how I want you to do it. Bakugo, uncharacteristically, doesn't seem outright angry about this reasoning. In fact, one of his eyebrows lifts. You sure about that? Yes. Ochako doesn't let any doubt seep into her tone and holds Bakugo's gaze straight on for a second. He doesn't deal in doubts. Just sparring without quirks, she specifies on the off chance that he's going to take her seriously. Ochako trains in combat whenever she gets a chance, but it can be tricky finding partners, or the time between everything else in school and personal lives. Ochako's friends are strangely reluctant to punch her even when she asks them nicely. Maybe, especially then. Fine, Bakugo says when Ochako is absolutely not expecting it. But you'll have to do better than those shitty moves you were practicing. Of course, Ochako rationalizes. Of course, Bakugo could do whatever he was doing and also have time to disapprove of her form. I'm working on it, okay? Ochako retorts, and is a little put out by the scoff from Bakugo when she raises her fists at him. Ochako has rarely pushed herself hard as when she first fought Bakugo. It was almost a disappointment when they didn't match up again at their second sports festival, though Ochako lost to the winner just the same as the year before. Not now, Bakugo decrees, arms weaving together to rest like a barrier over his chest. You help me first, and then I'll fight you at the end. Why do you get to pick the order? Ochako knows she sounds a little demanding, to be generous, but not even Bakugo can boss her around endlessly and expect to get away with it. Especially not Bakugo, as it happens. Ochako is uniquely and quite suddenly disarmed by the discovery that Bakugo appears to be smiling at her, the way a thief grins at a baby right before taking away its candy. Because after I knock you on your ass, you won't want to get back up. To others, this might have felt like a threat, but to Ochako, it's a promise. The whole point of Bakugo is that he doesn't hold back. Bakugo is agreeing to spar with Ochako properly, and she knows he'll push her more than anyone else. Okay. Ochako sticks out her hand as if to shake Bakugo's, though it's not the intended output of the gesture. It's a deal. Bakugo just lays his hand against hers, the pads on her fingertips pressing against the clammy heat of his skin. His palms are surprisingly soft. It's not a terrible feeling. But Ochako is very aware of the raw power that comes out of those hands. End of chapter 2.
Penny here. This episode has been sponsored by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, and Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place.